Well, greetings. I'm Joseph, owner and creator of the On30 Mosquito Creek Lumber Company Swamp Log and Railroad. Thanks for joining me for this video. In this video, I want to share how you can use color photos right off your computer printer to make some awesome backgrounds for your model railroad. No matter what scale you model in, you can use this technique. So let's go and get started. Now we're going to be working in the Blackwater Junction area of the layout. So once I found an appropriate picture, I saved it to my computer. All right, so let's find that picture. We're going to open it up in Photoshop, or you can use any other type of photo editing software that you have on your computer. I rescaled this photo, made it pretty large in order to fit on an 11 by 14 piece of legal, just regular computer typing paper. It's time to do a little manipulation. So I'm going to go over to what's called the clone stamp. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you know what a great tool this is. Click on that. And what it does, it'll take selected areas of your photo, and then you can clone that area to either add, in this case, more foliage or take some away. And here I'm using the clone tool to change up the tree leaves and the foliage. Pretty easy to do, and if you don't like it, you can always undo it in the editor. So now that looks pretty good. I've kind of added a little white space around the top of this image and sort of bleeded out the sky because we're not going to be using that portion of it. Here's another view of that same image after doing some enhancement to it. And you can do the same thing with different structures. I've got some Quonset huts in the Blackwater Junction area. This is a photo that I took in my nearby town of a line of Quonset huts. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and format it so it will fit and look in scale once it's on the backdrop on the layout. And again, we're going to be cutting this photo out and pasting it on the backdrop. Here's a cool scene also from the town that I live near that has a really cool corrugated metal fence. All right, so I've just printed this photo out in color on our inkjet printer. It's not high quality or super high quality photo that you'd want to frame on your wall, but it works really good for the backdrops on the layout. I've used this method quite often on several of my previous layouts, and it's pretty convincing, and it sure saves a lot of time. And for the most part, it's going to look very realistic because it is realistic. So I just take a regular pair of scissors and start trimming the unwanted parts out off of the photo. And this is just regular copier paper. And there you go. There's the scene. I'm going to cut this section down a little bit to fit into the layout backdrop here. One of the key things when using photos is to not have them up too high. Get them down to eye level, which might mean cutting a bunch off the bottom so that it looks more eye level when viewing the layout rather than hovering above the layout surface and the structures. Once I've got the photos cut out, I just use some masking tape to stick them up in place, and you'll see me trimming a little bit more off the bottom of this one section and kind of testing it there, putting another little piece of masking tape on it and seeing how that's going to look. Here's that cool scrap yard and the metal fencing. I'm going to start to cut out the buildings and things here. I'll eventually trim all the background buildings down just so that have the fence. I just thought that that large, more modern building didn't really fit in with the era of my layout. So just simple scissors, just a little snip snip around things. Doesn't have to be exact, because we're going to, for the most part, we can paint over that and hide any of the problem areas there and any of the white that shows through from the paper. I put the depot back into its planned spot on the layout, and then kind of lived with the way that these pictures were on the backdrop for a few days, taking some pictures, coming by, sitting down, looking at the layout and seeing if this is acceptable and if it looked good, and I think it does. As you can see, there's some differences in the color where I made cuts from different photos, and that's not going to be an issue either, because we're definitely going to be adding some more paint onto these photos to help blend them in together so you'll never see that seam. Here I'm just doing a real basic outline of these photo cutouts so I know where they're going to sit and to help replace them on the backdrop. Doing the same over here onto the right side of the depot and freight house. Just a couple little marks there to show me where these backdrop pieces are going to go eventually. Uh-oh, look out. Shark. Now, in the past, I've used the spray adhesives and really didn't have a whole lot of luck with them sticking very good. And I found out the science behind that is that eventually the compounds and the solvents in the spray glue end up breaking down and drying up and then peeling away. And that was very frustrating in the past, but I've learned a new method thanks to Boomer Diorama, going with the acrylic medium and using that as my adhesive, my glue, and my sealer for these paper backdrop photos. So this Liquitex matte medium dries perfectly flat and perfectly matte, clear as a bell. So it's an ideal choice for doing this project. It just acts like a glue. It's really nice. It doesn't get too wet and it doesn't cause the paper to get soggy like white glue has. I've had that problem in the past. This seems to behave very well and sticks great. I recommend this over the spray adhesives or using white glue to hold up these pictures. Once the photo is in place on the backdrop, you can continue to position it. Try to get the bubbles out from behind it using your hands, with gently pushing it onto the backdrop. And then take your brush with more matte medium and completely paint over the front area of your photos to help seal in the edges and also seal in the inks and keep these photos totally waterproof. Another thing that white glue or spray adhesives doesn't allow you to do, and a lot of times when you are putting in scenery or painting around an area and it'll stain and pick up the water spots because the photos aren't sealed properly. Going to add another section of backdrop photos, and again just painting around the outline there using those pencil marks, giving it a pretty good amount of the matte medium. And then we'll also paint the back end of my photo with the same matte medium. Once the backs are painted, position your photos on the backdrop. It's pretty nice too. It's unlike the spray adhesives where you have one shot to put it on and then it's stuck there. The matte medium allows you some time to maneuver things around and get things in place. The other neat thing about the matte medium is that besides drying perfectly clear and totally flat, it remains a little bit flexible. So it has more of a softer surface to it and doesn't become brittle, and you don't have to worry about the matte medium flaking off of your photos. And again, after completely painting the back of this section of photo, onto the backdrop it goes. And we'll get this other piece out of the way for right now. And just some gentle pressure on the photo to kind of get that seam in and pushed up against the glue, and then a little bit more to paint over the top surface, sealing everything up. So here's that one section in place and glued down. And here's a quick little drive-by shot of the fence in its place where it's going to be going. Living with it for a day or two, taking pictures, taking a look at it to make sure that the perspective is right, that it's nice and low to the ground and not floating above. You want it to be at street level. It's like this photo shows. There's a spur track that comes alongside that old fence, and I think that's going to work out great. So here's one of my Quonset huts. I'm going to mark its position on the layout so I can put it back in place, but that'll also allow me to get in there and put some photo Quonset huts in behind it, and that'll give the illusion of more buildings down behind there and give it this scene a great amount of depth and interest. So again, the same technique, painting the matte medium on the back of the paper that your photos are printed on, and onto the backdrop it goes. I'm just going to overlap them a little bit so that gives the impression that it is obviously in front of the scene where the spur track's coming in front of the scrap yard. That blends in nice. I think it looks great. And then a coat of the matte medium to seal the colors in there and protect your photo. And again, we'll just go through this real fast, marking another section of Quonset huts for a photo backdrop and getting that marked off, painting it with the matte medium closer to the ground and looks more realistic when viewed from the layout edge. So there you go. There is the adhered background photos, and quickly put some vehicles and the Quonset huts in the way, and that was good. Be sure to head over to our Mosquito Creek Lumber Company merchandise store. I got the link in this video's description. You can just click on that. It'll take you right to our store. And if you want to get one of your very own coffee mugs for the Mosquito Creek Lumber Company, or pick up a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, we'd sure appreciate that. And it helps spread the word about On30 model railroading. Onward we go. As you can probably see, there's a little bit of bleed over from the ink from the print onto the blue backdrop here when I put the matte medium on over the printed photo. A little bit of it bled off. So what I'm going to do first with the light blue color is clean that area up, get those marks out of here, and blend a little bit into some of the edges of the tree line here. So let's get started doing that first. As you might notice, I'm kind of overlapping my backdrop photo with the blue paint to kind of soften up that edge. And at the same time, I'm also getting rid of that staining. So it kind of takes away the cut appearance of the background picture. So over in here, obviously this is where our depot is, and you're not going to be able to see on the other side of it. So that's why the abrupt cut here and over here, and partial map of California and Nevada that is here. Why? Because I was testing my technique in an area that I knew wasn't going to be seen once the depot was in the place. Try to keep my brush strokes horizontal, so if there is some difference in the paint colors for whatever reason, that it looks more like striations in the sky or clouds off in the distance or what have you. So that's why I do that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to come down through here on the backdrop photo of the corrugated metal fence and try not to paint over the edges that much. Just kind of try to get rid of a little of that white line from the paper that comes when you cut and trim. Trying to be very careful. Come in there with my other brush and catch those areas, covering up that discoloration in the sky. That looks pretty good. All right. And trying to keep the paint strokes horizontal as much as possible. Give it a little bit more of a sky look, and we'll let that dry and take a look and see how that is. It wasn't super important, but I know that if I didn't paint it at this point, that I'd always be looking, going, the sky looks a little stained there. So we'll continue finishing up this line, and then should be ready to start painting some foliage onto the backdrop now in the next step. All right, let's get painting some trees now that the background is dry. And if you have a good keen eye, you'll notice that there's clouds in the sky now. I thought this would be a good time to throw a few clouds up in the sky before painting the greenery of our backdrop. So let's get our paints and start mixing some colors. So here's some of the colors that I've got. Here is a fresh fern, and this is called citron green. It's a kind of a limeish green color. Also have a khaki, a Kelly green, which is a darkish green color. And then I have a couple neutrals here. I got a dark gray and a dolphin gray, which is a lighter gray. So I'm going to use those to try to match the colors in the background. So you can see there is a little bit of this color in the tree line. There is maybe a little bit of this if we tone it down with some tans. Obviously there is some of this color that is in the trees, especially in this clump here, but we'll tone this down. And of course we can use the grays to tone those colors down, and then obviously we can use tan as well. I wouldn't use white because there's really isn't any white in here, and the tans and grays will give you a nicer green color. First, I'm going to add a little bit of the old khaki. I'm not going to need a whole lot because I'm not painting the whole thing. And I think some of this citron green, just a little drip drop of that. And probably I'm going to go with the Kelly green to start with. Let's see how that mixes with the tan. So a few drops of that in there. And a little dark gray. Just put a little, this has seen some good use, hasn't it? A couple drops of that to darken down our colors. So that's it. That is our color palette right there. I think I'm going to use this trashed old artist's flat brush because it's kind of pokey and has a lot of different character to it. Let's put it that way. And what I want to do is I'm going to kind of stipple the paint in along the edge here to kind of give it the impression of some individual leaves and branches. So that's what we're going to try to do. First, I'm going to mix up this paint. So mixing the fern, where was it this? So we're mixing up the Kelly green, the dark gray, and the khaki. Looking at that color, I think we're a little bit on the bright side and probably could use a little bit more of a brown of sorts. So let's pull out some brown paint and add that to the mix to see how that looks. This was nearby. It's nutmeg. It's kind of a dark brown color, and I think this might help mix with the khaki and give us that kind of tannish olive green look back there. Okay, adding a little of the nutmeg color to the palette, and let's see how that's going to work out. So a little tester over here. It's getting close. And finally, to this whole palette here, I'm going to add just a couple drops of black, right like that. That should do it. Just enough to darken down that color, just a shade. And I think we've got our palette pretty well taken care of. I think we're ready to do some serious painting now. So I'm going to take my beat up old brush and kind of dab it into the paint that I've got mixed in here, and then we're going to go over and start stippling it in. As you can see, that kind of gives the indication of some leaves and some branches up above. Try not to go too crazy. Just want to cover the edge there. And a lot of times what I like to do is come into the scene with my colors. Let's get a little bit of lighter shade there. And this will help everything blend together using what's already there along with the new paint that I'm putting on there. Just kind of rotating the brush to get a little bit of variety in where I'm stippling. And that gives some nice highlights of leaves that have some sunshine on them. And down below, right in this area, is the shade where the sun's not getting down because it's pretty thick in there. Add a few more. Let's get a little bit more of that light green color. And let's pop a few more leaves in there. And let's call it good. Maybe one over here. The key is knowing when to stop. That's the key. What I might do, since I tried to fill this hole there and it's not filling up, I think I'm going to cover that with some of my paint so it just kind of disappears into the trees there. There we go. So we're going to continue dabbing and stabbing our paint in here. Let's get a little bit more of the green. The thing is, as I said, try not to overdo it. Just get enough in there where it kind of looks natural and then leave it. Otherwise it's going to turn to mud. Once it's dry, we can go back in there and add some highlights and that type of thing. So why don't we just continue painting on here. Well, there you go. That's looking a lot better. It kind of blends in. I tweak this just a little bit more, kind of get a little bit more variety into some of these areas here. But I think for the most part, I'm gonna call it looking pretty good. And once the buildings and structures and vehicles and the rest of the scenery with trees and things are in front of this, it'll be just a real suggestion of some trees and foliage in the background, and it won't be sticking out as much that I've found once there's other things to look at, like moving trains and all that sort of good stuff. So I hope you learned a couple tricks here with easy to find and very inexpensive materials, a couple of old paint brushes, and thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to the On30 Mosquito Creek Lumber Company YouTube channel that you're watching right now, and appreciate those subscriptions and the thumbs ups, and be sure to hit the notification button when we put out a new video. You'll be one of the first to know. Thanks again for watching.